Good morning, guys. I felt like yesterday our class was a little too short, so I'd like to continue reflecting on Jacob's life and his restoration of his relationship with God and with his brother Esau. I would just like to thank you for submitting your answers. I'm not going to share them with anybody, but I just like to thank you for being honest. And I believe the best way to really transform our lives and to become better people is to take times to reflect and to really get into the nitty-gritty and see how we're doing and what things we can change. So sometimes it just takes too much energy and we just don't want to deal with those emotions or those issues. But once you have restored your relationship with God and with others, you are going to live free. So with that said, yesterday we saw how Jacob restored his relationship with Esau, but I'd like to dig a little bit deeper. So there in Genesis 32, those of you that want to read it again, Genesis 32, 9 through 12 is the prayer that Jacob did to God right before he meets Esau. And in that prayer, Jacob acknowledges first that he is not unworthy to receive God's kindness, nor Esau's forgiveness. But he asked God to save him and his family from Esau because he really thought that Esau was just going to wipe him out and his family. But then he remembered God's promise to make him and his family great nation. So how was he going to make God? How was God going to make his family a great nation if Esau was going to wipe him out? So he was again just telling God, "I'm afraid this is going to happen, but I ask you to restore me, to forgive me." So, his meeting with Esau was definitely not one that we were expecting, right? Jacob took many gifts to Esau, but then Esau rejected them. But the genuine happiness in Esau's face was when he first met Jacob, right? What can we learn about our relationship with others, the meetings of Jacob and Esau? So if we are kind to those who have harmed us and are willing to forgive others and allow God to soften our hearts, we will find true joy and peace. And the most difficult people to love, the people that we most dislike are usually the people that we are the closest to, and so those are the relationships that we really need to restore and work on. So my challenge to you today, guys, at 15, 16 years old, don't let your small bickering, those differences, destroy your relationship with each other. And definitely look for God for healing and for restoration. And once you get this now, when you are an adult like me at 40, you're not going to have problems with divorces. You're not going to have problems with your coworkers because you have learned at a young age to ask for forgiveness, to acknowledge the wrong that you have done, but most of all, to look for God for guidance, and He is the one that can transform our hearts. So, guys, don't give up. Seek God for help and guidance, and forgive. And God can restore and transform. Do not ever doubt in God's power. Okay? So I leave that for you today. So turn to your books to page 33, and you are going to be learning about Joseph and the narrative. In this story of Joseph, we will see a style of a narrative of the Old Testament. And we will see how the author of Genesis told the story of Joseph. We will be reminded that the stories of the Old Testament are God's story, not the stories of Abraham, Jacob, or Joseph. We will examine the relationship the family relationship in the descendants of Abraham through Isaac. We will see patterns of favoritism and the consequences that emerge as you complete the family tree. At the end of the lesson, I hope that you will have time to discuss, if not in your own mind, but maybe on Monday we can discuss a little bit about the sin of the jealousy that went on in this family and the consequences, which are the integral part of this story of Joseph and his brothers. The sins of jealousy and covetousness are also clear. They're also clearly seen in the world today. But we have an alternative to being caught up in these sins, right? And this is very clearly spelled out in the New Testament through Jesus and the epistles. So today we will read about this narrative in Genesis 37. And here you will see how the chapter sets stage for Joseph's story. It identifies Joseph as his father's chosen one, whom God gives a dream. But neither Joseph nor his brother nor his father recognized that dream to be natural. His brothers saw only a spoiled young brat. And they didn't understand about his dream and his status. But even Jacob thought that Joseph was overstepping his boundaries. None of them understood that someday they would bow down before Joseph the dreamer, who would save them and the Egyptians from what happened back then? Famine, right? So they just tried to destroy this dreamer, Joseph, and they were unaware that God would use their jealousy to save them. So Jacob's inconsolable grief is almost the final word of this chapter, but the last verse gives us a glimpse of hope. The Midianites who purchased Joseph sold him to the Egyptian officials. And that's where the main theme of Joseph's narrative happens, that God works through bad situations and the events, and even when people do not see those purposes. Joseph is a type of Christ. Joseph's life points to Christ, to one of God's intended saviors, right? Not just for the Jews or the Egyptians, but for the whole world. Joseph prefigured Jesus in several ways. Both were rejected and despised. Both were sold for pieces of silver. Both suffered and saved the ones who betrayed them, and both forgave their betrayers. So these are some similarities between Joseph and Jesus. So today we're going to be working on the worksheet, and that you'll need to be reading Genesis 29 and 30 to be able to understand the family line of Abraham's family through Isaac. If a person on the chart was a favorite of another, you should write favorite in the parentheses following the favorite's name. Some of the chart is filled to help you work through it. So then we're going to review it on Monday to see if you filled it out correctly. But submit it to me by tonight. And here you'll be reminded about how Jacob's life was and how his relationship was with his uncle Laban. And in this chart, you'll identify lots of different patterns, right? Like problems where the younger child was often favored over the older. So make sure you write who is favored and what problems they brought, grief and unhappiness. So this assignment is due tonight at 10. And if you have any questions, send me a message, please. Have a good day.